Okay, so we're talking about the skin. We have the epidermis and the dermis, the two major parts of the skin. Epidermis, that thin outer portion, is composed of several layers of epithelial cells. The outermost layer consists of dead cells containing keratin. Want to get our nice waterproofing, lots of salt. Dermis. It's the inner layer. It's the thick portion of your skin. Most of it is the dermis. It's a passage to get, so things that can make it infected. Hair follicles, sweat glands, oil glands. These are all things that cross through. And so, we have hair on the outside of our body that goes from the outside down to the dermis. And so those are all things that have pathogens into our dermis. Ways we try to inhibit or limit the growth of microbes. We respire. We have salt and lysozymes. We have a fatty acid layer. So we have things that try to make it a hostile place, or maybe if it gets in partway, it can't keep going. Try and make our skin an excellent barrier. Skin is there to prevent water loss. It helps to regulate our temperature. It's involved in sensory phenomenon. We kind of use our skin to touch a lot. And, mainly it's our barrier against the microbial invaders. So you've seen this. We have hair, we have sweat pores. Your epidermis is very thin in comparison to the dermis. And then we have, our fat layer down here. But we have these big hair follicles, so that gives you a nice, straight shot all the way down. Have blood vessels, different sweat glands, these go through, our nerves, so we feel things. So there's a lot going on in realistically a very small space. Thin isn't that thick. Skin thick, that one. Okay. So when we get a wound, which is any kind of trauma, trauma to any tissue of the body, so cuts, scrapes, surgery, burns, bites, wounds are, okay? But this will allow the microbes to infect at a deeper level. Most times, our body can deal with this, they eliminate the infection, but some of those can be quite, dangerous. Wasn't that what the chainmail was for? It wasn't going to stop the broken bones, but it was going to stop the cuts, because infection was a lot worse back then. People could fight it off. We have drugs now. Okay. Normal microbiota of the skin. So, we have normal stuff that grows on us. We have normal, harmless microbes present on the skin. You cannot completely remove them through cleansing, but they're made up of various microbes, like yeast and bacteria, staphylococcus and stuff. This is one of those things where a lot of times when you're doing science, you can contaminate your samples a lot quicker than they can hurt you, because on your hands you have yeast and bacteria. You're trying to do some kind of, you can easily contaminate your cultures. This is why you make sure you use flames. A lot of times you're supposed to be wearing gloves. Okay. Now, these microbes that are on the outside, they're on our skin, they won't cause disease where they're at. But they may produce a disease if they penetrate that epidermis, or if your immune system is compromised. So they would be, what kind? What would they be?
Endo.
If they don't normally cause disease, but they could.
Opportunistic.
Pathogens.
Yes, opportunistic pathogens. That's why we talked about the different ways you can become pathogens. Staphylococcus aureus. Okay? Commonly found in the upper respiratory tract and skin. It's production of toxins, so there's some direct invasion. It is assisted by enzymes. When you have skin lesions, so you can get infection of hair follicles, folliculitis, or you can have staphylococcal scalded skin syndrome. And this is caused by an exotoxin, you know, or you can get impetigo, so red patches on the skin, or you can get spread of this, you know, skin infections into the lymph nodes and produce redness of the skin. So there's tons of diseases of our skin. And these are some of the things that staph can actually do. Normally this staphylococcus does not scar because it only goes through the epidermis. It doesn't get down to the dermis. If you get down to the dermis, is where you're really going to get your scarring. Death is incredibly rare with staphylococcus infection, but maybe if it's due to secondary infection, so it's not going to be the primary thing that kills you, but if you have that and AIDS, then it might kill you. Usually these diseases are primarily in infants, but they can be transmitted person to person. And what does the SSSS disease look like? So this slideshow has lots and lots of gruesome pictures, just since we're talking about skin diseases.
Almost looks like a fire burn.
So, just so you can see what the scalded skin syndrome looks like. I'll take it off there. But for that, the diagnosis and treatment and prevention. So basically, you're just, you know, it's characterized by the sloughing of the skin, and you have to give them antimicrobials. Okay? But since there's so much Staph aureus everywhere, it's kind of hard to prevent it, so we usually end up just treating it, or trying not to spread it. Okay, Group A, Streptococcus, the flesh-eating bacteria. So Streptococcus pyogenes, highly virulent. It triggers the immune system to attack the host tissue. That's why you get that skin, you know, why it's flesh-eating. And so the toxins are destructive to human cells. This is introduced through a break in the skin. It has necrotizing factors, so it's rapid infection of subcutaneous tissue. What is subcutaneous?
Near the skin surface.
Okay. So it starts to destroy your muscle and fat tissue. And so, I mean, if your tissues are starting to be eaten and it's turning yourself against yourself, yeah, high mortality rate. So most of those are caused by the Staphylococcus pyogenes. That's the major family that does this one. It also can be spread person to person, and early diagnosis is difficult because the symptoms are usually not specific. You know, they can range. But we do have some antibiotics that do help with destroying it. So, necrotizing factors, your skin's starting to melt and dissolve. Cutaneous anthrax. Bacillus anthracis. What shape is that? Okay. So, zoonosis, meaning what? What is zoonosis?
Animal.
Okay. So it affects mostly sheep, goats, cattle, other animals, but it's cutaneous. So we're dealing with the endospores that can enter through breaks in the skin. And then they can decide, hey, this is a good place, let's start germinating and become vegetative cells. You can get black, crusty ulcers forming on the skin, and the bacteria can spread from the skin of infection and cause septicemia. So treatment, you gotta try to find it early. We have penicillin, we have a number of antibiotics, and also there are vaccines against this one now. Nice thing is that they're apparently painless, but they're black, painless ulcers. Also, to prevent the disease requires the control of the disease within animals. We want to make sure we can prevent it from being in the animals, we can prevent it from spreading to humans. Viral skin diseases. So we're talking about viruses. You get the infection, usually near the respiratory tract, is where most things come in. Hernia, high fever, you get a rash, some kind of skin lesion, and then you can recover from it. So, this is where, warts comes in. They're, benign epithelial growth in the skin and mucosal membranes. They can form on multiple body surfaces. Most warts are harmless, and they can be transmitted via direct contact and fomites. So, and as we all know, there's various ways to remove them. Liquid nitrogen works great. Measles. Okay. So we talked about vaccines before, and one of the common ones is MMR, measles, mumps, rubella. So, measles, you get these couple of spots on the mucosal membranes in the mouth. You get a skin rash. A lot of times you end up with complications, so it's like, you're going to have pneumonia and encephalitis. Are you going to get the subacute sclerosis? So it's like, some of these can be very fatal complications. Also, the adhesion and fusion proteins help this virus avoid our immune recognition, and the immune response of infected cells cannot causes most of it. So usually our body trying to fight measles is what gives us most of our signs and symptoms. So,
Could you elaborate on what subacute sclerosing encephalitis is?
it's a fatal complication. So slow progressive disease. Your central nervous system kind of going away.
Is it demyelinating or?
I'd have to look up exact
Okay,
action.
so-
Isn't sclerosis hardening? Isn't that sclerosis hardening?
That one I'm not sure, but we can Google it after. In general. Okay, but anything, one disease is bad. Usually you have two pathogens. That's when things really start getting bad for you. And what does measles look like? So it's not very spectacular, but stuff in the mouth. I'm sure it hurts like crazy, or the bumps all over the back. Rubella, so German measles. You get a relatively mild rash, can be more severe in adult cases, and it can start causing bone and joint pain, so this is where you might get some of that arthritis. Maternal rubella can be associated with severe birth defects. That's one of those things. There's some weird stuff going on that we haven't completely figured out, but some viruses or bacteria that you get as an adult that doesn't really affect you, if you're pregnant, it can have a huge impact on your child, causing severe birth defects. So the method of prevention, active immunization. We have that MMR. You get a booster every 10 years or something. And basically, what else? One of the main aims with that is you want to make sure you prevent women from getting rubella when they're pregnant. Otherwise, you're like, it's mild. So rubella vaccine, they started making an attenuated, what does that mean?
Live.
Live.
Okay. Started making an attenuated vaccine, and so you can see just the sheer drop in numbers based on just having that vaccine. And that's one of the great things is that for the most part, having vaccines over time, you can get that, the cases down to practically zero. Marcia-Zoster virus, more commonly known as chickenpox. Okay? It's a herpes virus. Signs and symptoms. How many people have had chickenpox? Okay, those of you who haven't, I'm sorry, because if you get it now, it sucks. Those of you that have, I'm sorry, because you have a chance for shingles. So it's they lose-lose. So in children, you get a slight fever, you get skin lesions. In teens and adults, it's much more severe. You have the potential for pneumonia. I know because my brother got chicken pox and my father didn't have it, so I got to see both my brother and father go through it. And yeah, my brother was playing. My dad was out for weeks. So prevention, there's vaccines for it. So you can get the attenuated vaccine. Yeah, one of the problems is with this virus is that it hangs out, and so it can be latent in nerve ganglia, and it can reactivate and cause shingles.
My husband got that.
Which,
My husband got that painful.
Yeah. From everything I've heard, that's something we really want to avoid. I don't know that we can, but we try. Usually most kids get chicken pox. Usually when you're young, you get them. And then that risk of shingles increases with age. The latency, so this virus can remain dormant in your nerve cells for years. And so one good reason to try to remain de-stressed is that if you're stressed, your immune system's going to crash. So that's going to also help. And so more and more triggers, you have a chance of getting shingles. And I keep hearing different numbers on rates of shingles. I think your book was having 15 to 20% who've had chicken pox. I hear some ads on TV that say 1 in 3 people are going to get shingles, but that could just be scare tactics. So it's, yeah. If you've had chicken pox, you have a chance for shingles. So what it does is you get that initial infection, and then it goes latent in the nerve cells, so in the dorsal root ganglia, and then it'll move into the peripheral root. And so that's one of the things that makes it so painful is that shingles comes through your nerves, so it follows all of your nerves. So recurrence of infection, shingles, you get the activation of the viral DNA in nerve cells, so it moves down the peripheral nerves. Overall, really not fun. But much better than smallpox. So, pox virus. There's variola major, which has a very high mortality rate, versus variola minor, which is a much lower mortality rate. So 2 different ones cause the same kind of disease, just different, flavors of the same bug. So transmission by inhalation, or droplets, or dry crust. So in general, I want to stay away from those things. So the disease starts with fever, you don't feel good, your head aches, your body aches. You can have multiple types of lesions. You can have macules, so the red and flattened lesions. Papules, so raised sores. Vesicles, so lesions filled with liquid. Pustules, lesions filled with pus and pox. So it's a nice variety of things that you can get. Currently, vaccinations have been discontinued in the 1980s due to eradication of the disease. So treatment requires immediate vaccination. A lot of times you get that an increase in monkeypox cases over the past decade has made it so we're kind of a little more weary of this, going, more monkeypox, should we be worried about this resurfacing or jumping? The researchers who work with primates all have been, they still get inoculated for smallpox, just because there is prevalence of monkeypox and we don't want them to get it and then it become infectious back into the population. What does it look like? A bunch of different varieties. Overall, you have pox and they hurt and it can kill you. Another skin virus. So herpes. Herpes simplex species. So
He has a question.
Sorry.
You said, besides that chicken pox, that it's worse if someone gets it now.
Yeah.
How long?
I'm not completely sure why it is, but it seems to be when you're a kid, your body deals with it better, and you're just, you're sick, but no big deal. When you're older, it just kicks your butt. And I'm not completely sure why it does that, but it's just, I think it's the different ways our bodies react to the viruses. I don't remember, I was a baby, and so apparently I wasn't able to scratch, so it was one of those good ages to have it, which you can't remember, but
That's fine.
it just, it's also probably one of those things of how old are you, how can you deal with having it? Because, you have these red bumps everywhere that itch. So, as a kid, you might have different controls than you do as an adult. Or vice versa. Okay, we good? Herpes. Herpes simplex virus. So, there's HSV1 or HSV2. So, 1, you get the cold sore, the fever, the blisters. 2, you have genital herpes. So, signs and symptoms. You have that initial infection, kind of feel a little flu-like, painful, itchy skin, either on lips or genitalia, depending on which one you have. It's a latent virus. So, it's latent in your nerve cells. It can just kind of keep popping up from time to time. That's why sometimes people, the joke is herpes, the gift that keeps on giving, because it never goes away. I have scientists friends. They have bad jokes. Treatment and control. So when you're in blister stages, you try and take some antiviral drugs. You try to reduce that viral load. You don't have sex during those times. So for the most part, you try to just manage and live with it. But it's not fun. Let's see. They're painful lesions caused by inflammation and cell death. Oral herpes lesions. So herpes, it can spread between the mucosal membranes of the mouth and the genitalia, so also not a good thing when seen. Then again, if you saw somebody with this, would you really decide it was a good time to go in for a kiss? But, in general. Herpes infections, they're not, for adults, not life-threatening. They're gross, but it's not life-threatening. You can also do immunoassays to reveal the presence of the viral, so even if they don't have the signs and symptoms, you can still test for antibodies. What test would that be?
For what?
What did you do on Monday? Eliza. There you go. Okay. Chemotherapy drugs help to control the disease, but you don't cure it. So, sites and events of the herpes virus infection. So, it's one of those things where, for the most part, you're going to have it
Little
in the
penis.
mouth, fever blisters, or in the genitalia. Those are major ports. But you can see all the nerves it'd like to go through and use.
True. So did you say that a race test is used?
And that is the
herpes?
gross out portion
Yeah.
of today's lecture, and that's chapter 19.
I was hoping I'd see a picture of the genital herpes.
I wasn't